Do you know if you'll have any presentations?
Not
On
today.
screen? That's what always screen. I'm good.
Where are we in the budget cycle? It's about midway.
The budget process.
Okay. I don't feel too behind then.
So I was hoping.
When we get to the fiscal year when the forms have come in, departmental forms are due to us, and I think it's
I know I want to be more in the weeds this cycle too, but also I know that we should have a tip conversation about what's feasible.
yeah, just give me a comment.
No six, right? Yeah. Only as much as
All right, good afternoon and welcome to the City Council Finance Committee meeting of Thursday, November 21st, 2024. 3 items on the agenda. The first of these is the discussion regarding the preliminary FYE 2024 City of Norman audit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to introduce Clint Mercer, our chief accountant, and Joel and Kirsty are here from Forvis Mazars. Is it Mazars Forvis?
Nope,
First one was right.
You got it. It's okay if you don't.
Basically, the auditors have basically completed their review of our financial statements. What you have in your packet is pretty much the audit document that will go out. There's just some final things to stick in there, the transmittal letter and some other things, but the numbers are pretty much as they will stand. So.
The city's total debt decreased by $9,563,881. Congratulations.
Thank you to our taxpayers, and that's just, again, kind of scheduled, no new issuances and that sort of thing.
That's wonderful. Any other thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, so at this point, we're pretty much into the final review phase. We plan to issue an unmodified clean opinion, no findings, nothing to report there. Overall, the city had a good year. One of the things that we get to do one time a year is the city issues what's called government-wide financial statements. I only do this once a year. They're very difficult to put together to begin with, but they're more on a kind of what I'd say a corporate type net income format. And the city, I believe, had about 30 million in net income essentially, which is really driven by 3 areas. The pensions are always, police and fire pensions are always fluctuating, but because the investments are doing so well, markets are, that helped out the pension liabilities, so that's a good thing. In addition, the investment earnings, so all the bond money that that you hold and maintain earned quite a bit of return this year just because the markets are up again. And then the fourth part was with the I think
It's really the acumen of your investment officer.
That's right. That's it. Absolutely. He's making money. That's what you want. And then the last kind of change was around property taxes, just because of the bond issues, the GO bond issues, bringing in additional revenues to pay off the bonds that were issued, I think for mainly street improvements over the past couple of years. So those are really the big factors, and they were all in positive. So that is where we sit right now, and we'll wrap it up. Kind of our goal is to get everything issued by December 3rd, which is the week before City Council, and be ready to go at City Council meeting.
Excellent. Did you have something? Yes.
Yeah. So on the financial highlights part, the first bullet, the assets and deferred outflow of resources of the city exceeded its liabilities and deferred inflows at the close of the most recent fiscal year by, is that 848 million? Or is that what the, am I reading
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yeah, you're reading that right, yeah.
$848,727. 848, so much a large number, I can't even read it.
Yeah. That's okay.
What does that mean?
Sure. So about 848 million is what your net position is. So that's your assets, what you have, less what you owe, comes out to be your net position. And most of that, I'd say probably 80 to 85% of that is just what you have invested in capital assets. So your streets, your buildings, That's most of what you have that you can't spend money on. Most of the rest of that, probably another 10 to 12% is restricted for certain purposes. So the bond issues that you have, grants, those get held in a restricted portion, so you can only spend those for certain expenditures. And then the very last number is unrestricted, which is what's available for the city to fund anything else. It's at a deficit position, has been for many years, which is really related to the pension liabilities. So the way the pensions work with the state, you don't get to carry any assets on your books, but you carry your portion of the liability. So it's really hard to see that number. It's my opinion, my personal opinion is it's not really fair to the financial statements, but that's just the way that goes. So the state gets to carry all the assets, you get to carry your portion of that liability. So that's really what that means.
If you think about it, we've gained a lot of assets in the last couple of years, a lot of streets.
Yes.
The James Garner, the library building, Ruby Grant Park, all of those are new assets that have gone on the books in the last couple of 3 years.
Okay, and
Why fact?
assume that's a similar case in most cities?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because of the pension thing?
Because of the pension thing, most cities are running
In
at a
Oklahoma.
deficit. Yep. Yeah, a lot of surrounding states as well. It's just the way that cost sharing works.
Does that mean we have more infrastructure, more things to maintain than we have the resources to? What does that necessarily translate to?
No, you're actually in a
We're in
positive
a positive.
position. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, so that 848 million, that's kind of what is that like what the value of
That's a
Norman?
net.
Yes.
If Norman were to be dissolved as a city, that would be the value of the assets.
That's
that would be-
essentially,
Okay.
yeah, that's what you're really carrying at.
And we increased it by 41 million
Right.
with new projects and infrastructure and stuff. Okay.
Correct.
To make sure I was reading that
Yep.
number correctly. And okay, and then the debt decrease, is that related to we've paid off projects,
Yes, paid off bonds.
paid off bonds, and that increases our bonding capacity also?
No, because again, we can only,
opens up.
assess property taxes for the outstanding liability that we have in that coming year. So no, it's not like it opens up new capacity unless the voters approve new capacity.
Yes, ma'am.
I was kind of curious about that water fund, the enterprise fund. Didn't we have to like carry so much?
A few years ago, before the rate increase was approved,
I was kind
there
of
was
curious
a large liability in the water fund.
how much of an improvement.
Because the new lead projects have not come on board yet, I'm gonna estimate that it's probably about $20 million right now of new net positive in the water fund related to where we were.
So is that what was it that we were supposed to maintain, like 1.5%?
Yes,
So we're well above that, like,
yeah, now that would be a misleading statement, just because we know that we're going to have to do those
Those
big
extra.
projects that the ratepayers have approved. And we
What is-
haven't done them yet.
Yeah, your debt service requirements and coverage is what was getting lower, but is now kind of increased back in the right direction.
yeah, I was just curious about how that shook out, so.
Yep. It's an improvement over where it was. But the problem with it is you gotta keep maintaining it is the issue.
We have a
Agreed.
wonderful staff that does stuff like that.
I would say, you guys might be on the lookout for some of your clients, who are going to be getting the letters about the lead pipes. The water utility has completed their inventory of where the lead pipes are in town, and letters have gone out to those folks, to let them know that they're going to have to fix this at some point.
Was that in addition, I mean, there were
No, that's a
letters.
federal standard. This is
No. The letters that went out, some of us have unknown, like when we go to the GIS map.
yeah.
So are
They
they
just did
done?
random potholing, but, we kind of know when we did replacements of projects, but yeah, there are some unknowns, yes.
Okay, yeah, I was
I
just
don't know if Chris
curious.
is here to speak to that better.
Guidance.
Um,
Yes, sir.
And that that letter went out to residents in cities across the metro, from what I understand.
Across
Or
the
across
nation.
the state, nation, yeah. So I saw some folks that were seeming to believe that it was a Norman thing, and like, oh, the city's got lead pipes all of a sudden, and it's Flint or whatnot.
No, it goes back
No,
to
it's every,
Flint, the Flint part.
every city though around here is sending out that notice to residents
Yes.
about, yeah,
I
so.
think ours was about 5,000 letters.
I don't know actually how many there were.
Well,
Chris isn't here.
On the map, there were almost no identified lead pipes in Ward 7. It was all new development south of Highway 9 or around campus, it was unknown. And then a few of them said not lead because it was a newer house, but I didn't see, or maybe I saw two green dots on my ward, but a bunch of unknown too, though.
I completed the risk assessment for water treatment today, and Rachel and Andy and Dinah informed me that that at this point they had received 65 calls from residents who received notices regarding their unknown pipes. So they're going out to assess those. So the unknowns will become known over time.
Okay.
They're unknown, but they got a letter.
Yeah, unknown as in.
In regard to finances, the change with the, what was it, 500,000 that we now have to police and fire and the state, I don't know if it was a state law, what was it, a state law that changed that now we have to?
The way that the retirement system changed?
Yes, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'm not aware of this. I'm not sure that there was a change.
There was.
I know that they did increase the required contribution.
Yes, sir.
That's
that
what,
okay?
I think that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
And you were saying maybe
We'll
it's
just-
in the $500,000 range or
yeah,
something?
and we will just budget for that next year.
But that, is that related to that pension?
It will, yes, yeah. Yeah, the police pension fund is actually funded 100%, a little over 100%. Fire has been the concern for years, and it's about 70% funded. So it's what carries a lot of that liability.
Why are they allowed to have different not coverage rates, but rates at which they have to cover themselves and to cover the debt?
No, again, they have to eventually meet their unfunded liability, but they don't have to do it immediately. And so the funded ratio will just depend really on investment performance at the state level. And because the markets have been so good, I remember the fire pension fund being 48% funded in some past years, so 70% is an improvement, but it's still a concern. And police used to be 70% and now it's 100. So because of the market performance overall, they have improved, but there is still an unfunded liability for fire.
Thank you, I never caught that. How that worked, okay.
Yeah, and I believe the city's portion right now is about 40 million of that underfunded amount. So, yeah, and it shows up in here again without the assets to offset that, so.
Well, and not every single fireman that works for the city of Norman is gonna quit on one day and retire, so.
Right, right.
I hope.
Right.
Is that accounted for, like, when we're talking about hiring more police or firefighters? We think about their salary and their benefits. Do we account for that
Typically.
We budget for the,
ongoing costs like that?
not the unfunded liability. We don't budget for the state's unfunded liability. We budget for our contribution. But yes, if we add firefighters or police, for each of them, we're going to have to budget 16% of their salary as the city's contribution to their pension.
Right. It's more on the government-wide statements that we show the liability.
Yeah.
All right, any other thoughts or comments or anything for auditors or Mr. Francisco? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys.
And thanks for the rosy report.
Yeah, hey, good news is always fun to deliver. We appreciate it.
The opposite.
And I will, I just want to recognize Clint and his staff, Debbie, some other folks who do a great job.
Yes, they do.
And a lot of times we take them for granted, but you might have read about Lindsay and some other cities who are not in such a good position. We take it for granted, but we shouldn't, that we get these unmodified opinions, and a lot of cities don't.
Yeah, it's actually more common probably for a lot of cities to not get good opinions. So it does, it's a testament to you guys and staffing, and they are great to work with.
Well,
Anthony included, you really have a treasure with Anthony.
truly good.
A wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. Item number two. Item number two, discussion regarding a potential amendment to the guest room tax ordinance to include recreational vehicle RV parks.
This was brought up by Councilmember Grant at our last meeting, and so our legal staff has done some research into that. We also had Councilmember Holman, who asked for some intercity comparisons. That's in your packet. I'm gonna pass around some updated information that we've gotten since we sent out your packet to kind of fill in those blanks that are in there, but that's really just background information. And I'll turn it over to Jeannie and to Rick.
No, I don't really have much. There wasn't a lot of research to do. I mean, when you go to the definition of what is a hotel, an RV parking spot for a personal RV is not listed in the definition of hotel. So, after talking to Rick, and I think Catherine had advised this a few months also, is that we may have to go to the vote of the people because it would be taxing a new class. I checked around. I think there's an RV park at the lake, which is on state property. There's one at the fairgrounds on county property, and there's one at OU on OU property. The only one that, and I've talked to planning, the only one we have is the one that's still not built, is Liberty Point. Laura told me from planning that it's still under civil plan review and there's no building permits been issued yet. So that's kind of in the future, but there's maybe up to 461 lots there. They're also gonna have 123 cabins, I guess, which, that sounds like a short-term rental to me.
Yeah.
So, there's not a lot of information to give. I don't think we can tax the parking spot.
But if they did these cabins, under
If
the
they did the
existing code,
cabins,
they would be.
I don't know, Mindy might leave. Yeah, that'd be 123 short-term rentals that they would have to license. We have right now around 350. And it literally, I do a teeny bit, I talk on the phone a lot to people, but without Mindy and Kelvin, it's a 3-staff person job to keep the short-term rentals going. They're the inspections of the code enforcement guys. I get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 phone calls a day plus emails. Mindy takes a lot of the calls for, taxing questions. It's just folks needing questions, and it's not hard. It just does take some staff time. If we had another 123, you guys are gonna have to give us a staff. Yeah.
My suggestion, you probably already thought about it, but was that it not be 123 individual permits, it would be one single permit for the entire property, as that property is a hotel resort. That's how I would.
We would have to think about
Yeah, it
that.
would
I don't
depend
think
on
the
how
other
they
people
lease
I'm making pay for 3 and 4 at a time. We'd have to
Well, like
think about.
Embassy Suites, they don't pay one for each individual room in the hotel, right?
No,
That's
I
kinda
talked to
what
Mindy
Englewood
about
would
this
do.
today. Well, we're gonna have to put our heads together on that.
That's how I'd view it, is like it's a resort,
They do have a,
so it
they,
would be all under one.
they will fall under like a mobile home park, trailer park ordinance, so they'll have to get an annual license from the city, and it's $10 per space that we charge one time a year, and we do an inspection, so that would be something that we're expecting to take place with that new one that's coming in. Liberty Park, is that what it's called? That's the only thing that we currently have right now, it's just a $10 per space fee that we would charge.
I
What do you
mean,
inspect when you inspect that, Jenny?
Well, we haven't had an RV park, but
no,
so
but your
right now,
short-term rentals.
short-term rentals, that's a little different. When we go into a short-term rental, it's inspecting the interior of the unit, checking the windows, checking to see that it's safe, fire extinguisher. But the mobile home parks, currently what we do with those is drive through the park, look for any code violations, health violations, parking violations, skirting on the mobile homes, things like that.
Back to your comment, Councilman Perlman, maybe that we amend the ordinance that there's some tiering on how many you have, maybe for every 20 you have to pay or something. Because Mindy told me today from July 1st through the end of October, we've brought in almost $175,000 in hotel motel tax on short-term rentals.
With 175 divided by 3 times the hours a day.
And we still get the license fee too. And it's not like some days it seems a little overwhelming, but Mindy and Kelvin and whoever replaces Kelvin, they're excellent. I couldn't do it without them, that's for sure.
I was gonna say, I know that short-term rentals and redoing that ordinance is also kind of in the, we want to work it through a committee soon. And I had brought up raising some permit fees. That was one of them. I think there's another one related to variances for music.
Yeah, the noise variance.
Yes, updating that, but
It's a $150 annual fee plus a $50 annual inspection fee, so $200.
for short-term rental.
And most people are making that in one night.
Oh, yeah,
They-
more than
Or
that.
more than that,
Yeah.
our fees are low. I've talked to our monitoring company and our annual fee is low.
But the fees that come in that could pay potentially for another employee as the short-term rental situation, we haven't discussed a ordinance revision and things that might come with that, so.
I've got some tweaking I need to do myself on it. There's a few things we've noticed over time, but it's pretty good. It's working. It's active.
It was more the thought of the balance between affordable housing and opportunities for residents to have housing versus what we have seen in other cities, and maybe as things grow as far as a fan base coming through Norman. That was kind of the thought about revising the short-term rental ordinance.
Some cities put it'd be hard to put a max because it varies every day. But some cities have found that they've put moratoriums for 6 months and let it just get caught up. Because sometimes Kelvin's told me they'll have 20 rentals needing to be inspected at a time.
And then.
He only has 4. And how many of the area?
4.
There's only 4 of them.
And
Plus their other duties.
What is the penalty for those operating outside of, like they're not getting their license?
It can be up to $750, but we filed a few, but we really spend time trying to get them into compliance. We just want them to be in compliance, but.
Some folks shouldn't be operating one and are trying to operate one. So,
Right, and
like,
we know who they are and letters are sent out, Mindy emails. We've really whittled that down with the new company. They can't renew their license without paying their taxes. And it's the new group is, I think don't you think since March, Mindy, we've made a lot of headway?
I agree.
But it's just learning the program, and Mindy and Kelvin are whizzes at it. I'm not quite.
So the ones that I'm thinking of are off of Acres.
They're not they should, I'll check again, but he was cited and paid a fine.
Stocks.
I haven't looked in a while, 119. I'll look, but as far as I know, have you seen that address?
I just looked last week on the website in the neighborhood, and I didn't see
No.
any activity there.
Yeah, he was cited and came to court, and I understood he was gonna have a long-term rental.
So that's who should be there now.
Who should be there now is a long-term rental. Now, I don't know, but I'll look again tomorrow.
And for
Not tomorrow, I'll look again Monday. I'll be gone tomorrow.
I was gonna say, so for the time spent cracking down on that kind of stuff, how much staff time does that take? Like, is it a long, lengthy process?
It just depends, you're researching through Rentalscape or the website, and then through Airbnb and VRBO websites to prove that they are still advertising, and then finding out who you need to contact and send a notification to.
And we get a list every month now, Mindy? Yeah, we get who's delinquent, and then we get a list of who's, the company sends out 3 letters. You're not licensed, well, you better get licensed. Now, this is really a warning. So the company that we contract with helps send out letters, and then I'll personally reach out to people, or Mindy gets on and sends. It's manageable right now, but I could see if we had 123, But it's manageable now, but I think we do need to spend some time looking over because now we've got 4 years under our belt about it. It's successful. Some people make money, some people don't. Some people try harder than others. I noticed one today, they rented 4 nights in December, or 5, and it was $965 a night.
I'd say the
It was a
other,
big old house, I'll tell you that, but
other part of it too, and this is in Ward 4, but there's a street where there's a lot of short-term rentals.
Maple,
Maple.
I've not had any more there's not a lot, there's more than one, and since that one, it's been about a year since I had anybody contact me about it.
Yeah.
But
It's
you're
kinda-
allowed to have 4. The 5th one you have to come to council for. But what happens is, it might be Anthony LLC, Holman LLC, but we have very few of those. We have a couple of places that have apartments and they've gotten a little, but we don't have many that have multiple.
Well, just thinking in the future around the short-term rental ordinance about what a neighborhood street is gonna feel like if it's not a bunch of neighbors and it's a bunch of short-term
I've
rentals.
talked to this old Silk Stockings neighborhood and I went through the entire map and gave them a list of who's in that
Area.
parameter. It wasn't as many as they thought, but Hubert does have a few.
Yeah,
But it wasn't, they thought there was more, I believe, but I did provide all those addresses to their neighborhood president person.
yeah,
It took me a little time to do that, but I don't really get complaints, I just get property hosts that don't quite know how to figure it out.
I get the
That's why I call
complaints.
Mindy, and she's the tax lady. She figures that out for the money. She does a lot.
Yeah, I would say I get the complaints. They're usually about people who are having a party, which is kind of the thing they're not
I have
supposed to
very
do.
few. I've had very few complaints. I had a high school party over Halloween. That was interesting, and an adult rented it for a cousin. But I don't see a lot of charges come through court or people calling me and telling me there's a party there. Now, unless they call and complain, we're not gonna know. So,
Well, and
but
I've
I've
sent
called
out
the homeowner before. I called a homeowner and said there was a party.
Yeah, I've sent out the link to people, it's like on the website where they can put in a complaint about short-term
Very,
specifically.
I've been 4 years, I haven't had 5 come through that portal. But sometimes people reach out, you may even call me personally, because my number's on the website. But we don't get a lot. And if we do, if you know folks in your wards, they need to call the police, they need to call and report them so we'll know.
Yeah,
Some
And
people,
that
it
would be more when
happens,
it's happening. See,
Yeah.
that's the thing, you wouldn't really know.
Right.
This isn't advertised to be a party house. It's
right.
advertised to be an Airbnb or
right,
something.
and I
And
don't
it's
hear
used
lots,
as
so
a party house on this night.
if they'll do that and let us know, then I'll get a hold of the property owner.
Yeah, and one of the more recent ones, Old Silk Stocking, I heard something about one night when there was a party. And then the people I sent the link to were Faculty Heights neighborhood. Because there was somebody who I guess was a student, then moved away and was Airbnb-ing that house. And there were other issues there going back. So maybe
Yeah,
some
they-
of them got conflated with some of the neighbors.
I need to
But-
call the police and have somebody come and shut down the party and then figure, but anytime you hear of any address or whatever, call me and I will track it down.
Yeah, I can tell you there's a Airbnb right up from my house, probably 6 houses away. Never been a problem when they first moved in. Everybody was
Worried,
like a bunch of chickens. And so
but
nothing has ever offended the neighbor. Matter of fact, I forgot about it until you were talking about it now. They just-
you call me and I can figure it out.
All right.
But so far it's been pretty successful, or
on,
very successful.
I'm sorry, on the, when we're thinking about ordinances for, RV parks, that kind of a thing, your personal advice or the advice of from you guys is pretty much not worth it?
Well, the difficulty is this, and I've looked at it from the perspective, because sometimes the legislature will enact a fee as opposed to a tax as a way to get around the requirement that taxes go out to a vote of the people. And the distinction between a fee and a tax is, a tax can generally be used for any revenue that you obtain as a result of a tax can be used for any governmental purposes, whereas a fee is supposed to be limited to whatever you collected the fee for. Kind of like we were talking a little bit earlier about the fee for an entity that has like 150 sort of smaller cottages. And part of the difficulty is that fee really is supposed to be for the purpose of offsetting the cost of administering the regulations. So if you charge one fee, well, code has to go out and inspect every one of those particular cottages. So the fee is supposed to be for the purpose of offsetting that cost. Probably couldn't, I mean, unless the fee amount was gonna be relatively low for those RV parks, you probably couldn't justify doing a fee, because there really isn't a whole lot of work that we would be doing administratively with regard to those particular spaces. If you did it as a tax, it has to go to a vote of the people.
Yes, sir.
So what I tried to do during the little research I did was to try to even see if I could find, do we even really have any RV parks in Norman that this would apply to? And like we said, there's some at the county, there's some out by the lake, there's some at OU. In terms of what the city would be able to impose a tax on, quite frankly, doesn't really exist right now. You could think about it in anticipation of this potential RV park sort of going forward, but still, it would be something that, if it's a tax, it would have to go before a vote of the people before you could impose it. We also talked about the concept, the difficulty with regard to how would you go about enforcing it? Because it's kind of like the short-term rental. You know, fortunately, we have a company, and that's what they do. They sort of, I'm sure they've got crawlers and appliances that they can plug into the internet that capture that data for them so that they know when an Airbnb in your municipality is rented, and can give you information to show how much you should be collecting from that particular owner in terms of taxes. I don't know that the same thing exists with regard to RV spaces.
I'll ask this company if they've had anybody else, contact them about it.
It just sounds like, to me, this is just my personal opinion. It just sounds to me like it's making work for no real gain.
If we were gonna overhaul those provisions, sort of do an overhaul of them entirely, it would make sense to do it in that respect. Now, for example, if you wanted to put up another vote to raise the hotel motel tax rate, or some other provision that you were gonna sort of pair with that, it may make sense. Elections cost us about $20,000. So the question would be, even if you had this one that you're anticipating, would it really be worth it to spend $20,000 to go to an election when the revenue that you're going to get from taxing those particular activities wouldn't be that significant? And maybe if you paired it with something else, it would be.
I was under the impression the RV portion was gonna be a part of the hotel motel, and it was putting it in there so that as this SCC visitors who like to do RVs, which you could see if it's really successful as an RV park, more coming online, the idea being like, let's capture it. And then also in talking with Visit Norman's Dan Shum, and I think Daryl had even sent us a text about what, I think they raised it to like 10% OKC.
9.25.
Yeah, so,
So
I mean-
recently, the question would then become, is the electorate interested in raising it again? And part of it goes back to, in thinking about that, my understanding, and maybe I can go down there and check now, that my understanding is since the university has a lot of RV parking spaces, and encourage those people to park at the Lloyd Noble, that's where a lot of them are parking.
I'm gonna look around, I'll look around at the other SEC school, like, Tuscaloosa, and see what that they do.
because
I can do that.
I was gonna say the part about being with the hotel motel would be that it goes back to arts, sports commission, and parks.
Right.
So that's where that tax goes.
I want to make clear that my understanding was that was the question posed to our legal staff.
Yeah.
Does this fall under the existing room tax code? And I clearly hear them saying kind of no.
Yeah, that's why
But
you
if you
have to go
wanted to
down.
make it so, you would have to go to a vote of the people. And I'm also kind of hearing consensus saying we don't want to go to a vote of people just for that. So am I clear? Is that?
I mean, I think that There's the thought that we could come back and ask for that also to be raised. What, we did 8%, or was it
It
7?
Right
was,
now
was
it's
it 2 years, it was a year and a half ago when we raised it?
To
Norman's on the top there, 8%.
8%, yeah. So
And we're at the high end, you know.
I don't think it's something I would want to put the pedal to the metal on, but I do foresee maybe asking in the future.
It may be if we had more parks, more, that becomes a thing. That there are a lot more parks out there doing that kind of thing that we say, maybe now we need to recoup, but, I'm just looking risk reward kind of a thing, and I don't see it. Stephen, I'm sorry, Councilmember Holman.
So yeah, my thought would be not a question to increase the rate again, but a question to include this entity or not. And I would agree, I wouldn't want it to be like the only thing we put an election out, would be to ask people to include RV parks in. But if we had other things, charter amendments or a regular city election, it'd be too late to try to get it on February, but if we had other city elections or state or some other election where the council wanted to put that question on, I could see that being a possibility. But I would like to know, yeah, if other college towns in the SEC or Big Ten or wherever, if they have included that into their visitor taxes as an entity that has to pay into it. And yeah, what is the legal difference between Embassy Suites and this RV park? As far as the Embassy Suites doesn't have to pay a
No.
tax on every individual room in the hotel, they do. You don't have to go inspect every single
Yeah.
room.
They rent.
How do y'all inspect?
We inspect those annually. I go out with the fire marshal and we go out and do that every year.
Okay,
And
so,
the difference between the license and the tax, you remember the tax is applied on the rental of the room. And you have to have more than 3 rooms to be a hotel and that sort of thing. But the license for a facility is a separate thing. They're looking at, is this a safe facility and all of those sorts of things. That's different from the tax that's applied to renting that facility for a night or 3.
that's what I'm trying to get at is the Embassy Suites pays our visitor tax, right? Who makes them?
When they rent a room.
When they rent a room.
Well,
Is
the
it-
customer.
And is it, well, yeah, the customer pays it, but like at the end of the month, the hotel does their statement and they say, okay, this is how many rooms we rented out and here's the check.
Yes.
Mindy does that too.
And we have to follow up and make sure that all the hotels in town are paying this 8%, is that right?
Yeah,
So we enforce it.
we have 30 hotels or something?
I guess like what I'm getting at is the RV park, I don't know.
If they
When it
collected
comes
it,
to
they would have
like,
needed.
how can we collect the hotel motel tax from that RV park? That's what I'm.
Yeah, and I would echo, I'm not like super keen to get it on a ballot by itself, just to be clear. I was more thinking this would be a evolving conversation and
Yeah.
include Visit Norman and the desire to potentially raise the hotel motel, because again, it's, as Dan likes to say, OPM, other people's money. And I would say for the sports commission, I would like to find out how they're spending their allotment. And, because the idea was if you have people using WIFAC for competitions and coming out of town, all that, like this money would come back to some facilities maintenance or potential other things about bringing in other competitions through the sports commission. I think I was told it's December whenever they will finally report in, because they're pretty new. But I would be curious to see how they're spending that. And I'm not opposed to maybe raising if it means our facilities are keeping up with maintenance for all the extra use.
And I think that's when I was talking a little bit earlier about the difference between a tax and a license, I think, or a license tax and a license into a fee, that's the distinction. Because you should be using license funding for the sole purpose of things like inspections and things along those lines. And if we were arguing that the hotel motel tax, if we were saying it was a license, you wouldn't be able to spend it on visit home and stuff, because that's not something associated with why you're charging that fee. The only way you get to do that is because you call it a tax.
Which has to go to people.
Because, I say you call it a tax, the only way you get to do that because it is a tax.
Yeah, and I feel like our voters, again, this isn't coming this year or even probably next year, but can appreciate that with an ID or tribal card that they're not the ones paying this.
Right.
So, the FCC just means more, then we should be keeping up with all the extra.
Right.
So, like, if Hard Rock Resort wanted to build a resort hotel and multiple things on the river, on the Canadian River, or at the lake, that entity as a whole would have to pay the visitor tax, right?
They were in the
Well, it
city
would
limits.
be, no, it would be per their room rental. So the entity would be paying it, but they would be
Right.
collecting it from the people that they're,
And that's with the RV park, like the entity that runs the park.
Right.
They rent out the cabins or they rent out the space for the RV. And that person that's renting it out pays this 8% tax. And then the park as an entity remits that to us.
Right.
That would require a vote of the people
if it's a tax, yes.
if we're adding that entity, because it isn't not considered a hotel currently.
Well, I guess the question would be, if it's the cabins, they may already be considered to be rooms.
Right.
The issue, the difficulty with the RV park part is those aren't rooms.
So we can't tax the slab is
You
basically.
could.
Visitor tax the
Yeah,
slab.
you could tax the slab, but we just haven't. The current language of our hotel motel tax wouldn't include
And
that.
that may be the question that we'd be asking voters, do you want to
That's right.
include the
Yeah, that's,
slab for an
It's-
RV?
this
Okay.
definition's been in here a long time. And I've seen it in others, this almost exact language in other.
Okay.
So it's something to start thinking about working on and on.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying the three of us are totally overwhelmed. We're doing it fine and we're getting it done. Sometimes it's kind of fun. I love looking at all the pictures of them.
Some of them are themed.
Some of them are really nice, really cute, and some are not.
Yeah.
Look scary.
Well, they're just not very done, some are really, people really go out of their way to really make them cute.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I guess the next item on the agenda is discussion regarding monthly revenue and expenditure reports. Francisco.
As you saw in the sales tax report that went out for the month of November, it was not a good month. We were down about 6%, 6.2% from last year. And we'll continue to monitor things, but, we've been on this -1, -2, -3, -6 trend for the full fiscal year now, and so that's for real concern. We will also continue to monitor the enforcement of the state's grocery sales tax and its impact on us. And this is a statewide concern, but it just, the current trend is not positive. And I do think that it's kind of reflective of where we're going as a national economy and a local economy.
We are in for a windfall, Anthony. I've been told so.
Oh,
Yeah,
New president.
oh,
The economy's we're gonna be flush. That's what I heard.
again, as an observer of the economy, all the trends would point toward the fiscal stimulus that was impacting since COVID has worked its way through. And we're kind of, and I don't think the Federal Reserve is doing a really good job of trying to engineer what they call a soft landing. But we're moving down, and how far down we go is, depending on a lot of things, but the overall mega trends of the economy are negative, they're not good.
So we've avoided a recession, but we're
Yeah.
kind of marching towards one.
would it be fair to say it's almost a hollow victory? We seem to see you know, investments when we're talking about short-term investment, those are positive.
Yeah, the market is excellent. Has been really good the last
So
year.
it just leaves the gap in between what I could buy 10 years ago for the price today. So it's
And
inflation.
you
it's
have some
killing
money
us.
in your pocket to buy it. That's all.
Well, that's, you know, yeah, it feels like the stock market is like record breaking every single day. The biggest corporations making the biggest profits they've ever made, the wealthiest people becoming more wealthy than anybody's ever seen in our ever. I mean, being worth $300 billion. And that increasing like 200 billion in the last 3 years is just wild. But then a bunch of indicators, like you mentioned, that show that a lot of things aren't very
I'm
good.
talking about the overall economy.
Yeah.
The
Good.
richest 1% are doing really well.
Everybody else is struggling.
But unfortunately, we're not part of that. And the other thing too, that's an indicator, at least to me, of how actually strong it is, the economy here in Norman is now we're up to 58% free and reduced lunch in the school. And that's slid in constantly and raising constantly.
No, we saw.
How do we fix it?
I don't know that you can. I think that's just a trend of the kinds of people that are going to public school. Richer people are just not going to public school. And so they're not qualifying for free and reduced lunch because they're going to CCS or something.
That never occurred to me, thank you.
We saw a graph today from Norman Border Realtors about single-family home value in Norman and the metro, and it's like this, and then Norman goes like this, and is starting to separate itself from the metro as far as single-family home values in Norman are like skyrocketing.
On sales price or on ask price?
Sales price.
Sales
Yeah.
price.
Yeah, because I was like, is that asking? Because I was like, people are definitely asking for more than they're worth, but we're seeing houses sit longer. We're seeing price reductions more and more, is what I've observed.
That sounds good.
And then, yeah, the value is exceeding the metro average, which is the person we were talking to was kind of concerned about that trend. But multifamily duplex, Norman was trending below in value compared to the metro, which was interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Anyway, sorry, sir. We went down a rabbit hole.
I was gonna say, it looked like also OKC was down 6, Edmond was down 10, and Martin was down 10.
Yeah, but when I say we were down 6, we're kind of in the middle. We're not, and that's why I'm saying it's indicative of the overall economy. It's not just us.
What portion of grocery tax do you think is in that?
About 25% was our estimate of how much of our tax base is generated from groceries.
And that might be missing
but
from
again,
this.
The intent of the state grocery sales tax rollback was not to impact cities. It's not supposed to impact cities, so.
That's not what's happened.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see, 5.5 up to 7. What I was gonna mention about again, like I do every month usually, but the negatives, and I explained to somebody on Facebook this earlier, was they're like, well, we're down 6%, and I said, well, yes, but it's a little misleading. We're down 6% from record highs over the last 3 years.
Yeah, now
And if you compare
again, but
this
it is
month-
3 years. So,
Right.
I have been saying over the last 2 years or so that we were flat, but we were flat from a very high plateau.
Yes.
Now we're
Coming off
still
that
at that plateau, but
plateau.
we're coming down, and that's a concern.
Well, but if you look at that second chart, the unrestricted sales tax chart, it shows the last 5 years. This month, November 1, it's still like $1.5 million in total dollars above the 2019 level. So, down from, being on this plateau, but still quite a bit above the, I don't know, average, but the level of sales tax we were bringing in prior to 2020. It's still considerably higher than that. But so have our expenses grown as well, so.
Is 2022 like the high point?
Fiscal year 21. And then we stayed at that high level in 22.
But I would, if I'm reading this right though, October of this year, this bar is the highest bar over the last 5 years. So does that mean it was our best month?
October is always a very high month.
So
Yes, they come
September
in
of
more
this
so.
year was maybe our best month of sales tax in the last 5 years.
August,
August,
collections in August.
which reflected as October, yeah. So yeah, it's real interesting when you can kind of make whatever story you want out of data, as we know, but.
So how do you see us doing budget this year? More conservatively?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay.
And we were prepared to make the presentation about the capital budget last night, but just know that, that available for new projects is way negative. It's not, it is of concern negative. And so when we have made that statement in past CIP budget presentations, and we have said, boy, you guys you can't add anything unless you're gonna take something away. And then you will just add stuff and not take anything away. I'm serious, I'm really saying,
I got to this too.
this year, I mean, it's gonna be,
This year you're gonna have to knock us out.
yeah.
Well, but that, you can't avoid the truth. I mean, it's just, the numbers have to add, and hopefully they come up positive, but if we're sitting in a zero state, we have to make some choices, and there are some things that we get influenced to do by other groups, ACOG being one of them, where we are spending money and we are getting money back in. It sounds like a good deal because we're getting a pretty good rate of return on it. But if it's deleterious to the whole budget, it's not a deal. It shouldn't be a deal. But it'd be interesting to find out the needs, wants, and desires and what we actually have to have. And I bet that's what you got forecasted in that.
Yeah.
And it was a very nice presentation on the effect of arts to the economy, but I'll stop there. I'll get in trouble. It would have been nice to hear that. We will. And I know
It's
that.
coming on Tuesday. We
Yeah.
don't have the presentation, right?
And when it gets so late, and I was glad to postpone that. Any other?
Yeah, I was kind of curious, talking about those capital projects. We're also in the discussions around a TIF district master plan and possibly paying for things, ideally ad valorem. I'm a little reticent to want to use a sales tax TIF, but I mean, we see some projects coming on the horizon that if you could capture that ad valorem could help pay for some things.
Yeah, and again, in the presentation or the discussion of that TIF master plan, I had asked Kathleen to, do a sort of an introduction or preamble sort of thing to say, we would prefer to have property tax TIFs only. And then you go from there. If you want to do a sales tax, you can. But yes, our preference is to do incremental property tax as opposed to incremental sales tax for that reason.
We did identify a project. Again, I'll have to make a meeting and see what you can actually fund with these things. But there was the thought of some infrastructure improvements. Not actually in my ward. I think it's all Ward 7.
One's in Ward 7, the other's
Yeah.
Ward 5, the ones that we were talking about.
I'll be glad to talk to you anytime.
Yeah, developments that are coming without it, but present an opportunity for us to
And it has
capture that. And
been a
put it to
project
use.
that we know we can't pay for. I think it was like 20 million for a bridge around Cedar Lane.
Cedar Lane and Jenkins, that whole.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, no, I don't, just off the top, that's a lot of money to pay for with the TIF. I mean, especially in that, it's bumped up right against the university. That's a very small incremental tax area bumped up against the river down here in the OU over there, which is it's a big tax exempt entity.
It's just that it has mixed use and some more
Yeah.
intense high density use.
And so, yeah, I would think that that's a really good area for an incremental tax district, but just not 20 million, maybe 1 million or 2 million. But if it's going to cost 20 million, and I don't know, I'm just using your number.
I think that's what.
Well,
the
let's say that it's
presentation
20
said.
million.
The total area is probably bigger than the center city area of that one.
It would
But
go
how much of
from
that is tax?
nine to Cedar Lane or 9 to Post Oak, either one, depending on the project that you're working. And Cedar Lane being the target area, and from Jenkins to Classen?
Yeah.
So Cedar Lane to Post Oak is floodplain, it's
It's all-
floodway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Of north of Cedar Lane, around Avara, and between
Yeah.
Jenkins and the Walmart Supercenter.
Yeah, and we'd have to do, again, though, just my reading of that area and what I know to be there, the area that is developable, whether it's because it's floodway or because it's already developed, is not that great. It's ideal for a small TIF, million, 2 million, maybe 5 million, but 20 million, I don't see
We
it.
were thinking if the project area, I guess how Quail Springs Mall, I guess some of they're able to do stuff downtown because of, but like that bridge being constructed by a project area that includes the Walmart Supercenter and the new
But
proposed.
see, the Walmart Supercenter's already built, so
Right.
that's the thing, it's not gonna generate much incremental tax.
Well,
because
just that, like, Destin's Landing being developed
all
next to
those
that.
houses are built, that's the
There's nothing built there yet, is what I mean. Like Destin's Landing is not developed yet. It will be the largest development in the city of Norman. And when all those new houses and apartments do get built and they start shopping at that Walmart or the new undisclosed
Yeah.
big box store that may be going in down there. Because I'd had the same conversation about the Griffin TIF was make sure we draw the line to include that super center, because if there's a whole new neighborhood built where Griffin Hospital is and those people are shopping at that Walmart, then I would assume the revenue of that Walmart would increase and we could capture that
If you did,
increment and put it back into that.
If you're talking about the sales tax increment,
Yes.
though, I kinda like that to go to the general fund, that's just,
Maybe it's just ad valorem, but that the property value would probably increase over there if we build a whole brand new neighborhood where Griffin is.
it's not as much as we would think, though, is what you're saying.
yeah, and again, you have a much better vision for that than I do, so I don't know, how many houses would be potentially built in Destin's Landing, that sort of thing, but, and if you drew the line all to encompass all of that area, and how much of it is already platted and how much of it is already permitted are two different things, but again,
That's why we talked about
20
maybe,
million is a lot of money.
maybe including this new big box proposal that may be going in, because it's not developed yet. And if it's gonna be a big retailer like that, then going ahead and getting it in there so we can capture.
Well, it's also a safety thing. I wonder if we could work something with the state, because remember what happened during the tornado and all those guys are trapped basically down there
Yeah.
eking out
Yes.
traffic.
So maybe fund a bridge through a TIF and also other,
I bet
Yeah,
it
general
takes,
obligation bond, that's
GO
where
bond?
I was leading.
okay,
Is that $20 million is a lot for a TIF, but it's not that much for a general obligation bond.
and that, you say it's $1 per 100,000?
Rule of thumb, $1 a month pays for $10 million worth of project.
10 million, okay.
It's $2 a month to use that project.
So, anyway, any other, we need to have an economic summit sometime when we can just all sit down and ask Yoda the questions.
well,
Answers will I give?
I mean, but there are ways around shortcomings in the future where we're not reliant all on sales tax to get things done.
It'd be nice.
I was gonna note the inner city room tax comparison, how ours is increased from, we did vote to increase it, but the total revenue from 1.7 million up to 3.5 million this year from 2022. And then 2023, it grew to 22.1 million, and now 3.5 million, and that's actual
No, that's projected.
projected, okay. And then just comparing that to like Broken Arrow, 836,000, Edmond, 859,000, Moore, 542, they actually decreased. And, you know, Stillwater's got OSU, but they're at 1.6, smaller town, of course. But one that stands out though is the Boulder thing, because Boulder is a smaller city than Norman. And they're very their zoning and stuff is way more restrictive than ours.
man.
But they have 12.8 million, and they're at 7.5% on their tax rate for the visitor. So I'm just like wondering how many hotels do they have?
Well, they have a lot, and they have all those ski resorts close by.
Oh, the ski resorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure if that would make sense if they're capturing that type of stuff. That's interesting though, but that it was just so considerably higher than all these other college towns that are in most cases bigger than Boulder too.
See, I like to go to those ski, not necessarily in Boulder, but I like to go to those ski resorts in the summer. And I can tell you, you know, the hotels in those ski resort towns are $300 a night for, you know, one king bed room, so.
Has we heard anything about Moore proposing to raise their visitor tax or building a new hotel or anything?
Not to my knowledge.
So they could get some more spillover?
There are proposals for new hotels in Norman, though.
Yep. Several of them.
Well, yeah, it's very encouraging, and that's a lot of additional revenue for parks and arts and tourism, so.
Well, and as you say, we need to make sure that that's being spent correctly, not correctly, efficiently, I guess would be the better way. It's correct in the way it's doing, but making sure that all those things last, because
And I was gonna say, it's a great way, just that tax, to pay for the arts or investment into it that isn't coming from the general fund.
Yeah.
It's coming from the people visiting us.
Yeah.
We got a water tower we can paint,
Yeah,
our project.
they do a mural grant, that would cost a lot then.
So,
anyway, let's get out of here. Anything more from you guys? Well, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for your input.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what paint.
Yeah.
More improved, like
Well, because I've been at odds with them. We've had a lot of
when I went on vacation.